Yeah, hi guys. Very good evening to all of you. Now in this video, in this lecture, I'm going to walk you through something very interesting, something very powerful, and something which I have made for one of my students, and it took almost hours actually for me to develop this kind of a utility. It's a very good automation, and in this automation, we are going to talk about the events, right? As I always say, events are always my favorite. They are the phenomenal thing you can ever just imagine in Excel. VBA, very powerful, very powerful. Now, one of the examples of this events I'm going to share right away with you. So my subscriber Arjun had shared this the problem with me, and we have sorted it out to quite an extent. And what is the problem? What is basically what we are doing here is that now you have to go and look at this. First of all, quickly what we are going to do here is, now the point is, what we are doing is, we have a situation, guys. This is my C8 cell, you can see here. Now I want that when my user go and type in here anything and he presses enter, the drop down should come. Yes, the drop down should come. Right now you can see there is no drop down. The drop down should come and it should give me the list of the items from this column, which is XEO, where I have written here, a lot of stuff you can see here. It is written, and I want to pick up those items which contains the word I have written here. After once I press enter, what I'm saying is, let me quickly show you. So look at this. Suppose I go and say Dell, right? I go and press enter. Okay, the moment you go and press enter, you find here a drop down automatically coming up in front of you. That's a fantastic thing. I'm not pressing here alt down arrow, the shortcut key, how to populate the, if you are an Excel savvy person, then you know that the alt down arrow is the shortcut key to expand the drop down. But in this case, the VBA is doing it for us, and this is the magic I'm going to show you today, how you can do this. So once I have my drop down, now drop down contains only two items which contains Dell. You can see one is the INC private limited Dell, and the second is Dell CURH LT. And if you go and find these Dells over here, you only find these list over here. I mean, the Dell is available only in two items. These are the two items, this one, and you can see here 1 and 2, the numbers are coming. How this is done, I'll tell you in just a while. Okay, so I can go and select this. I can press down arrow, up arrow, and I say that I want this. I select, press enter. Once you have done that, again one more pop-up would come, but this time because you have already selected your item, just simply say escape, and you are done with this. Okay, I repeat that again. Look at this. Now what I do is, for example, I go and write here another the name called Dell, and this time I say that sales, and I say report, for example. Okay, now come back here, right here Dell, capital, small, whatever you want to do, you press enter, and now you find here a drop down showing 3 items. Isn't it fantastic, guys? Well, I thoroughly enjoyed this code, and once again, thanks so much to Arjun, who is my student, and he has put out this question, put it across to me. Okay, so guys, how we have done it, let us go and talk about this. We have a long way to it's going to be a long video, so we have to go obviously gradually, but let's make sure that we shouldn't be wasting enough we shouldn't be wasting the time on this. So guys, before I go and show you the VBA code, if anyone who is interested in looking at how it is done actually in the Excel also, then he can maybe spend here 15 minutes more, or maybe you can quickly go and fast forward this if you already know how this is happening. Okay, so I'll explain you this. Now of course, this is not an Excel chapter, this is not Excel series, but I like to explain you because this is very important. Now here you have the items. So one thing you see, I've kept, this is the column number XEO, which is far away from the human eyes, because when you go and work on this, generally you don't go to the XEO columns, right? I've just to explain you, I have hidden the rest of the columns, okay, so that you can see what is happening. But the point is, generally we will like to keep our user away from what is happening in the background. So, and this is all the background. Okay, so this is your column. You can put this in any different sheet as well. That is something you need to decide. Now what is happening, let's go and talk about that. Now in the XEO, you put all your numbers, all your values, right? And in these values, now we go and use a function called find. you can see here there is a function which is if error search, and so find or search, whatever you want to use you can use. But here we are using the search. My user is my student is using the search, and I think the reason is because search is a case insensitive, whereas find is a case sensitive function. I hope you know that, right? Find doesn't work in case of uppercase and the lowercase mismatch. Okay, that is the only function I know so far which has a sensitivity issue. So you can use the search function. Now I'll give you the idea. So if you look at this, here we are using if error search and the isNumber function. Now what is happening, you see, when I go and write something here and I press enter, in the background the VBA says that whatever the user enters here, that has to go here. Okay, so it happens immediately, and I'll show you that code. But for the time being, what you need to understand, what you go and write here, for example, I go and write here share. Okay, I press enter, forget about this drop down, but the thing is the share goes here, the share goes here, and this share, your function is finding it out here. Okay, now this is what we are doing. The search function, this search function, it is picking up this $2, which is this one, and it is trying to find out this share word in this cell. Now you know the search returns the position if it finds the value, you know, you are trying to find it out. So if the value written in the B2, if it is going to be found in this cell, search will return the number, the position of that item, right? So in this case the share is on the first position, you can see, so search will return the first position, right? Now if let's say we don't have a share market, if we don't have this word called share here, then what should happen? Then the user is using the if error. He's saying that if the search returns an error, which is only, you know, which will happen only if the word which you have entered here, which is here in the B2, is not going to be found here, right? So then in that case if error will act, and if error will, you know, say that it has to be a blank. So that's why you see here we find here some of the numbers coming here, 0 and the 1. I'll just explain you that, right? So this is the logic. So I'm saying that if you find a position, return the position. If you don't find a position and if you find an error, then simply say space. Okay, so in the background what is happening, if you simply go and see, if you try to understand this code, I'll take you to the formula tab. Look at this in the evaluate formula. If we go, now the first thing which I'm going to pick up in the B2 is my share. In the share is going to be found where? Obviously in your XEO2, which is this range, right? One of the cell of this range. I click on the evaluate. Finally you have the share market status. If you go and use the find here, find also has the same parameters as search, but in the find, if you go and use this share, find returns an error because it's written in the small letter, and here we have, you know, the string is in the capital. So that's why make sure when you go and use, you should be knowing you know, how your database is having the values. If there is a case sensitivity issue, I suggest you can use the search as my user also has used. So the search is going to find out the share, and this should give us the position of the share, and as I was telling you, we have got the position 1. Now 1 is obviously not a number, so finally what happens, this is what you see here, is number and the 1. Okay, now why we are using this is number and hyphen hyphen? Well, this depends upon person to person. You can be here, you know, you can use some other way as well. Basically the point is, what he's doing is he's saying that if I find the share in any of this, remember it is contained. We are not saying that the cell has to be exactly share. We are saying that share can be anywhere, but if it is coming, which means if any of these, the values, you know, the cells one by one, all these 200 values, if they have the share, each one cell, you know, one by one we are checking, if it contains share, then it has to be 1. If it doesn't contain share, it has to be 0. So this is what he says. I'm not changing his formula, but you can write here some different formula as well. So now is my the number called 1, is it a number? You know, this is a boolean function in Excel. So is number returns 1 to true because this is a number. If it would have been something like this, let is number in the brackets, you have some text called ABC, this would have returned error, false actually, not an error but false, right? Okay, because boolean function either returns true or false. So finally you will have the true coming here. Now if you go and multiply true with some value, you always get that the same value back, because true is considered as 1. True in Excel is not a string, and I've said this many times, right, in Excel series also. What is going to happen here is that when you go and put the double hyphens before true, what happens basically, this true will be converted to a number, and that's how you see here 1, right? So as I said that this is just a matter of choice what you want to do. Maybe you can simply say that, if the error comes, then just go and print here 0, and if the error doesn't come, then simply go and write here 1. That's all up to you how you want to do it, but this is how the formula is written. So I have converted 1 and 0. I have converted these cells to 1 and 0. Try to understand this way, right? Now 0 means the item is not there. Now for example, if I go and write here somewhere here, let's say I go and write here share, and then I say that share market, for example, I say share market going high. Okay, I go and write something like this, going high. I press enter. Okay, you can see here I got here 1. This is what it is doing, right? So it's picking up in this entire cell. This cell is being picked. That is why we have freeze this, and we are checking this. If it is found, we are saying it has to be 1, and if it is not found, it has to be an error, and the error ultimately gives you back 0. Okay, this is how the logic actually is working. All right. Okay, now what is the next thing we are doing here? Now in the next the column over here, one more formula has been put in. Now what this formula does is, this formula basically, now I'm not changing these formulas, right? So you have to understand them as it is, the way the user has written this. Okay, but again I'm saying you have other ways as well. I mean, it is not just a one solution. It can never be a single formula in Excel, when you go and talk about the different problems, right? I mean, different problems can have multiple the solutions, right? But let's go and see how he has done it. Now he says that if I got here 1, then I want to count this value. But look at this, there is something very unique thing he's doing here, one of its own kind, and this is something we use very actually not often, but it's used very rarely, but when it is used, it actually helps you in achieving a lot of difficult things very easily. So this is what is happening. If you look at this, this is my XCS column. So he started the table from XCS2, and he's stopping in the XCS2 only, right? Generally a table always has more than one cell, but in this case it is using just a one cell right now. It is not using more than one cell, right? But here is the situation. If you look at this, you have a dollar here, but you don't have a dollar here. Many of the Excel users, they think that every time the range has to be given, it has to be completely freezed. Okay, so but this time what he has done, he has kept this open, because when I go and drag this down, what will happen, this $2 will remain $2. So basically the opening mouth of this table will remain as it is, whereas the ending mouth, the ending position will keep on expanding as you go down. Now if you look at this here, I'm using the COUNTIF. I'm saying that let us count all the ones in this table, right? So the table is obviously XCS2 to XCS2, the same table, but the point you go and drag the formula in the downward direction, what will happen, your table will start expanding, because XCS2, if you look at this endpoint, it becomes 3, right? Now this becomes your table. So now you're actually saying that if you are 1, then I'm going to count you from the top. So finally you have the 2 number here. Similarly, if you go and check here, see this, I press F2, look at this, the table is expanding. Now you don't have the XCS2, you have the XCS13, guys, right? Whereas this remains XCS$2. So from the top to the bottom, so as you go down, the table keep on expanding, and the idea is to, if I'm here, I should be able to calculate all the ones I'm coming, I have got so far over here. Okay, I'll tell you the reason why we are doing it, but this 3 means that so far we have been able to find this share word in this entire list 3 times, and if you go down, you don't find here, I think there's no another the share word over here. But if I, let's say, go and write here anyway share, for example, I write here share and do not share, for example, look at this, you get here one more value, which is 4. This means that this is the fourth share we have found, guys. Getting my point? So we are using the COUNTIF. We are saying if you are 1, then I like to count you using the COUNTIF, but I like to count you from the beginning of the table, which is this one. This one, XE2 to XE39, right? So this is the plan. Now once you have counted it, what is the next thing we are doing? Now guys, if you are good in Excel, then you must be familiar with this index and the match functions and the rows functions. Okay, I'll try to explain you what is happening here. Basically, this is where the data validation will happen. Now this is where we will find all the items which contains the word you have written here, and this is the range which we are going to actually pick in the VBA program. So here you will find everything. For example, if I go and write here, let's say Jasmine, and I go and press enter. Okay, now you see that here the list is coming. So I have got here 1 2 3 4 5 items which contains this Jasmine word, right? So this is the list. How it is getting now generated, let us go and talk about it. Okay, now this is a formula. I'll go and break up this formula. So what is happening, forget about the if error, because you know how the if error works. If the error comes, you will have a space, so forget about this. What is written inside, that is important. Now you see, this is my table, and in this table I have 200 items. If I go down, okay, it's a big range. Now in this range I'm already getting my this filtered range, but how it is coming, this is something we need to understand. Now if you look at this one, let's forget about this now. Okay, here I have this one, and then if I go down, I will have this 2. Okay, this means this is the second Jasmine we found, and if I go further, then I will have all these numbers 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, you know, they keep on coming next to the cell where we have this Jasmine. Okay, now guys, the plan is to capture the row number of this cell, okay, so that we can go and use in the index. Okay, now this is the row number, what now, this is the row number 76, right? But for my table, this is going to be 76 minus 1, excluding the header, because I'm not considering the header here. So this has to be basically a row number 75, and so on. Okay, so how I'm going to calculate the row number, I'm going to explain you, but why I'm calculating the row number, this I'll just explain you in a while. Okay, so now look at this. So what is happening, if you see this is something I actually calculated it for you. This is not we are not using this in the formula. What I did is I picked up this match formula here. You have to understand this formula, very important. This is used as a row number in the index. Now for those who do not know the index basically what it does, if I tell that index is a formula which is a lookup formula, it is used to capture the values. If I say that index, you need to go in this table and you need to pick up the row number, let's say 7, and the column 1, then what happens in this table, since we have just only one column, right, it is just a XEO column, so column will be 1, and in this column if I say pick up the row number 6, then this is the row number 6 which it is going to pick up, which is this one, INC private limited Del, right? Now in the same way I will say that index, you have to in the index go in this table XEO2 to XEO 200, which is my last cell, pick up the row number of this fresh Jasmine where I have got this 1, which is the row number 15, excluding the header. So index will go and pick up this 15 row number and put it here. Now how you got to know this row number of this row number, which is 14, excluding the header, right? Well, you can see here I've got here 14. This is what I'm trying to explain you. Now guys, what is done in this formula is I'm trying to break it up. Basically what we are doing, since we know that these numbers are going to come as 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10, and they can go up to 200, what we have done, we made a plan. We said that we like to go and calculate, we like to find out the position of 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 one by one. Okay, so what he's doing is he's using the rows function. Now what does the row function does? For example, if I say that I have to go from XE2 colon to XE2, okay, if I say this, if I press enter, what will happen? If you know the rows function is a function which returns the number of the rows coming in this, the range, and since I have used the same cell again and again, this is going to return me only 1. Okay, So now the point is, I go and freeze this 2. I put the the dollar here because I want that when I go and drag this, it should remain as it is. But however, XE2 should keep on changing. As a rule, golden rule in Excel, this XE2 is going to be XE3, XE4. So eventually what will happen, you will be able to create here a series of 1, 2, 3, 4, because the moment you drag your cell down, your every time you have a new cell added in your range, and that means you have the more number of the rows. So this is how I beg your pardon, let me just control Z it. So when I go and drag this, see what will happen. So you are able to create a series called 1 2 3 4 5 6. Now people who do not understand this row function, they can also go and type in this 1 2 3 manually. That's perfectly fine. They can type in somewhere here and they can use this as a cell reference. Okay, this is what is happening. Now why we are creating this 1 2 3 4 5? We are creating this 1 2 3 4 5 is because we want to see that what is the position of this one. Okay, position means what is the row number of this, and then down the line, you will have the 2 somewhere coming. Okay, so what is the position of that 2 as well? So that is how we are going to calculate it. So now what we do is we go and use the match function, right? Because match is a function which returns the position. Okay, now whatever I'm telling you right now, this has nothing to do with the events, right? But as I said, that if you cannot create this, there is no point that you would go and create the final part of this program, which is to how to use the events in highlighting the drop down. Okay, so this you must know it. That is why I'm telling you, so that you shouldn't be left incomplete in this the session, wherein you find yourself in somewhere in the mid of this the program, and because half of the knowledge is always danger. So that is why I'm telling you that in case if you do not know these things, at least you can take the idea from here and you can work on it. However, if you are not an advanced Excel user, trust me, this will not make sense to you, right? So but I'm doing my part. I'm just trying to explain you. So you have the match here. Now the match is going to pick up this one. So they say that pick up this one, obviously in which table. This is my range, so they're going to give the range um, from here to I just go and do this again. So XE2 to colon, and then you go and maybe select, let's say this cell XE5. I give this as 200 because my table ends at 200, and then finally I will have my exact match, which is 0, right? So when you go and run this, and before you go and do that, you make sure that you freeze the table, which is very important. So I go and press F4 here. So basically you have asked the match to find out the position of all these 1 2 3 4 numbers wherever they are going to be found, and you have got the answer. You can see here. So the moment I drag this, you should be able to get all the row numbers, the positions. So in this table, if I start my table counting from here, that this is going to be, this word Jasmine is going to be coming on the row number 14, right? This is the Excel number 15 minus 1, which is your header, that makes it 14, isn't it? So this is 14, and if you further go down and if you see that there is another one coming, it must be on the row number 32 for the Excel, right? So but this is for me, for my index, this is going to be a row number 31. So now this is the point, guys. So this is how we have been able to calculate what we have been able to calculate the row number. Now this entire thing goes in the index. Okay, so you go and say now index, you go and start writing index. Now how the index works, in the index, first you give the complete table. Now this is my table. You go and select this up to 200. Okay, make sure you have this XEO 200 like this. And finally the row number. Now row number is already counted by the match, and then you can just go and press enter. And so you can also go and write here the column number comma 1. If you don't write it, that is also okay, because column is optional here, because since we have just one column here of this table, so there's no need to write it. So if you have a multiple columns, then you must write. So when I go and press enter, see this is what I have got, right? So similarly, when you go and drag the formula downwards, what happens every time, now here the match will find out the 2 and then 3 and then 4, and it keeps on returning the position means basically what is a the sequence, the number allocated, the serial number allocated to this, if you start calculating from here. So this is how we have been able to calculate this entire thing over here. Okay, now once we have done this, now so I simply go and just go and hide this, because now you don't need that part. Now finally we are here, and this is how now we have to see how the program is working. So I go and show you how this when I go and type in here something, how the things are working and how the VBA is picking up this, basically the range. Okay, but before I go further, I like to tell you one thing. If you go in the formula bar, so what the user has done, this range, it is dynamic. It depends what you have written here. For example, if I'm going to write here, let's say the flow, and I press enter, you see that in the flow I have only one item, and which is this item, Mazy flow charts. There's no other flow. This entire item list does not contain flow more than once, right? So automatically you have now just a one cell. So how you want to make sure that the drop down should always pick up the number of the items, automatically the number of items coming here. So what he has done is he has created a name manager. I hope you know that in the name manager we have created a name manager with the name of drop down list, and this is what we have used here. Generally people use offset, but he has used the index. You can also use the index or the offset, whatever, right? You can use the offset also. So this basically is simply calculating that how many number of rows you have. You can see here in the index, in the index, first of all, the range is given, which is XE U2 to XE U2 200, which means from here till your 200, and then we are counting how many rows we need. So counting how many rows, he is using COUNTIF. So he says that I want to COUNTIF in the same range, which is XE U2 to XE 200, but what I want to count, I want to count anything which comes before star, which means that basically so when you go and write here the star, I don't think so you even have to write here the question mark. You can also go and simply type in star. Star means everything you count it here. Okay, so eventually the cells which have some value alphabet, they will be counted, and in that case they will act like a row number. So if I have here one item right now, this COUNTIF star will return me 1, and eventually in the index it will work as a row number. So you are saying that that in the index in this range XEU2 to XEU 200, where I have to stop, I have to stop to this cell which is called XEU2 2. Okay, and in the same way, so you have put here the XEU2 colon. So the index returns you something. The index basically returns you what? Index, in this case, index is going to return you this cell. Now this cell has already a starting point, because you have to start from somewhere as well. Because if I have here flow coming here in the 3 cells, for example, then the COUNTIF will return me 3, right? So that means index is going to be stopped at the 3rd column, because you're telling the index to go on the 3rd row, right, of this table. Now if it has a 3rd row, where is the 1st row? Well, the 1st row is this. So that's how they have said that XEU2 2 is going to be fixed, and they put the dollars here and then colon, and this is going to return you some address, obviously, and that address is going to be picked up from this entire thing, right? So basically this is the drop down list, which is dynamic. Every time you have a change over here, for example, if I write here, as I was telling you, that if you go and write here market, for example, and you press enter, right, now when you go and see that, look at this is a range coming now. Is this going to be absorbed? Is this going to be picked up from your this name manager? Let's go and check that. I go and click here, and you can see here I have got the values. Why? Because it says COUNTIF, then the star means let us calculate all the characters, all the values, whatever it is there. Okay, so it has counted all the values here, and it comes as 3. That means you're telling the index to go in this table XEU2 to XEU200 on the 3rd row of it. Okay, on the 3rd row of it you have to go, and then you are not writing here the column number comma 1. That's not required, that's optional, because this is just a one table. So finally your index goes here, and when the index goes here, it stops at here, which is your XEU4, and XEU2 is already there, so XEU colon XEU4, that becomes your range, right? That is how it is. So this is how you can create the drop down list. Why I'm focusing on this? Because this is what I'm going to use in the VBA. Okay, now in order to show you how the function is going to run, let me take you to this Visual Basic, and let's go and show you this program. This is the program which I have written, okay, for you guys. And so I go and put the breakcodes here. Okay, I'll explain you. So if you look at this, we are basically running here 2 events. Okay, and I like to show you all these events in single page. So I go and maybe keep this as the size as 10. Okay, now pay attention here, guys. This is very important, right? This is your code finally. Yeah, so simple, right? I mean, you have just, I think, 10 or 12 lines over here. Okay, I put the break code here. Now, the first thing which I'm going to do is, if my user selects in this sheet anywhere, for example, I select here, right? Now, do you want to do anything, by the way, if you select anywhere outside this? Of course not, right? So when you go and select outside this, okay, this event selection change is going to fire. So the event is fired. Now you see that, so what we are doing is selection change event always fires, as I explained in my previous also, you have seen, must have seen the series. So there we talked about this selection change event fires when you have a change in your cell. Okay, and since we are writing this in the sheet one, this module, that means it is specific with this sheet only. Remember that it is not going to work in any other sheet. Okay, so you must go and write this code in the correct sheet. This is very important. Now first the thing is, I selected the C1, so that is your target, right? We know the target, how it works. Now I'll talk about this target dot count in a while, but let us now first of all go and understand the rest of the procedure. Now guys, we are using here intersect point, so I'm simply saying that, yeah, so I'm targeting only one cell, C8. Okay, just in case, obviously, in case if you want to create more these sort of drop downs in Excel, make sure you have a range here, C8 to maybe C20, C50, whatever, right? I'm just using it for the demo purpose, one column, one cell. So is your target, which is right now obviously a blank cell, but the cell is C1, is it a part of C8? Obviously there is no intersection here. So what happens finally? You go in the else and you will not do anything, and this is what is required, because I don't want to do anything if there is any other selection, right? But now if I go and select this specific cell, which is my target area, this one, okay, I go and select this, you see the event is again fired. So let's go and see that. Now this time the intersection has happened. So you're writing here not is nothing. That means is nothing means obviously what? Nothing, right? Nothing, no match found. But when you go and combine it with the not, that becomes basically find something. You find something, right? So I'm saying that if intersect C8 target is going to find a match, match means the target is going to be a part of the cell, then what should happen? Then we will go in the then area, and you can see here, because you selected the C8, so this time we will have the then part executed. Now the first thing which I want to do is I want to enable my events as false. By default, the events are always true. Now what I'm doing is this command, it makes us sure that the further there will be no re-triggering of this event. This event should not refire again, rerun. Now you would ask me why it is going to do that. Well, it can do it because the next line which you're doing, you're deleting the validation. This is a data validation which we are deleting here. Okay, so I just as a precautionary measure, I'm making it sure that the event should be false. So when I go and run this, finally in this C8, if you look at this carefully, there is a drop down coming here, right? And if I click here, this will expand and I will be able to see my all the items which contains market, and that is share market status too little for market and share market going high. Okay, so I'm making it sure the moment the user selects here, first let's clear the data validation. So range C8 dot validation dot delete, this is going to delete everything. You can see the drop down has gone from here, right? If you have an hawk eye, you must have seen it. Okay, so this is how it is. So the once I have deleted everything, I'm going to put that enable events as true, because this is very important. Otherwise the enable events will not run again unless you close the file and reopen. So finally we are done. So this is the selection event. This is just simply making it sure that if you go and select any cell, nothing should happen, and if you go and select this cell, the existing data validation should be deleted first. Okay, now once I am on this cell, obviously I like to write here something, isn't it? So now let's say I go and write here del. Now the change event is going to happen the moment I press enter, guys. This worksheet change event fires, right? Because you have changed the value. So what is the first thing? Again, I leave the target dot count as it is. The first thing I'm going to make sure is that enable events, again we put it false. The reason is because in the next line, what you're doing, whatever you have entered here, whatever you have written here, and then you have pressed enter, that value has to go here, because this value is we are using here in the find is going to pick up the B2 value, and it is going to find in these cells one by one. So this is very important, right? So this is happening through the VBA, and this happens on the auto mode. This doesn't need the user should go to some button and click there. This happens immediately you press enter, and this can only be achieved by using these wonderful, beautiful events. Okay, so finally I have in the B2 what is going to be written, whatever value you have in the C8, which is del. So you have the del here. You can see here, the moment you have the del here, automatically the formulas which you have left here open, they will calculate where is del. You can see here I've got the del, and this is my first count, this is my second count, this is my third count, and so on. There's nothing below this data, there's no del. That's why I see here only these three items over here, which is this one, this one, this one, because index is now picking up. Index is going in the row number of this, which is row number 5 and then maybe 6, and then index is putting all those numbers here. You getting point? Okay, now what is the next thing? The next thing we are checking here, that if this target is a intersection point of C8, obviously yes, right? So we will go in the then area. Now in the then area, understand this very, very important point. The first thing which I like to do is, again, I want to make sure that if there is any existing validation, though it is not, but if it is there, it should go and delete. So you go and run this. Okay, the next thing which I'm doing here is that I'm using the range c8.validation.add. so I'm basically adding the list here, and this is the alert information, and in the list of the data validation we are using drop down list, and this is the same thing I told you, right? I showed you in the formula bar. Now what is it? Now guys, please don't panic here. I am not that intelligent that I should I have written this all by myself. Well, this code actually, honestly, I never used before. So what I did is, in order to put the data validation here, what I did, I recorded the macro. I said that go to the data and then validation, or maybe all DL, and then I just use that. So this is the list thing, and this is the alert information, which is basically alert information means there are different types of the alerts. You know that, I hope you know that. Let me show you. First of all, reset the code. This is very important. Now you see, if I go to this sheet, for example, and I go and write here something called, let's say, this and this and this and this. Okay, now guys, if you go and press Alt DL and you put the data validation, okay, you go and write the data validation. So this is that list. Okay, this is that list. This list is coming from there. Okay, that VBA code. If I take you there, look at this, add Excel validate list. This tells me that I have to add the list. Which list? Obviously this list is going to be like this, drop down. Okay, so this is happening in the macro, this is happening in the VBA, this is the drop down. But what is this valid alert information? This is very important, very powerful. Now you see, if I go and select this range in this list, okay, for the time being I select this range. Okay, now the next thing which should happen here is, I want this alert. By default it is always on the stop. Okay, so if it is a stop button, though there are many other options, warning information, which you can change, but if I keep this as stop, then what will happen? Now once I have created here the data validation, okay, this is where we have the data validation. Now you see, I can only select what is entered here, like this. But what if I want to, in my case, what we are doing is we are typing in a part of us, that the content of the cell, which we are trying to figure it out whether it is there or not. So if I have to find that how many times I have a word called D, which is contained in this cell, and then in this cell, and in this cell, and then in this cell, obviously I will go and start typing here D, and I try to press enter. But the moment you try to press enter, this is not a validation list, so this restriction will stop you from doing this, so you will not be able to press enter. That is why I was looking for a different kind of a validation alert. So what I did is, that's why we used, instead of the stop, we used the information, right? Because information allows you to enter the value. Now when I go and press OK, see what is going to happen. Now here I do the same stuff. I press D. Look at this, there's no option coming here, retry. It says that the value doesn't match the data validation, but still it says, if you say OK, I will allow you. Look at this, right? Now guys, the point is, if I go and write here something called, let's say, E, and I press enter, I will hate to see this prompt coming again and again, right? I don't want this. It is allowing me to enter it, but I don't want this prompt. Okay, so this is why we have used this line over here, that on the C8, the validation, the show error has to be false. Make sure you write this, otherwise what will happen, every time you enter something, the prompt will come and your user will be irritated. I'll just explain you. For example, look at this. For the timing, I go and remove this, okay, and I just go and remove the break codes from here. Okay, there's no show error coming here. But now the moment I write here something else again, let's say share, and I press enter, do you see that this prompt is coming? Now it says that you have entered something which is not a part of data validation. Now obviously this cell is using the data validation from here, which is XU, right? I told you this thing, and here you don't have anything called share. That's why the Excel surprised and it says that you are entering something I don't see in the list. Well, the Excel should know that what I'm trying to enter here is I don't want that exact word to be there. If it is there, good, but if it is not, then I want you to just at least go and give me the result which contains this word. Okay, and this is something you cannot communicate to Excel. Okay, that's why we are going to use the VBA, and then of course this OK will allow me to enter this. But the point is, every time you go and type in something here, now again I go and say, let's say I type in here Airtel, I press enter, this prompt keep on coming, because every time you're entering something which is not a part of the list, right? It contains, but it is not equals to Airtel, right? So this is what we are doing here. So that's why what I've done here is that I've used this, the show error command as false. This is a new thing for me, this will be a new thing for you. When you do this, then what happens in the error which you were seeing, that prompt you can say, that will not come and your life will be smooth. Okay, so now let's go and run this again. So I go and type in here, let's say Dell, I press enter. Okay, let's go and click OK. For the first time it is going to come, because this has to be, we have to run this line in order to make sure the next time the prompt should not come. So now you know that I'm targeting the right thing. Let's quickly go and let's have the Dell printed here in the B2. The entire list of the Excel would have changed in the background, right? We will see in a moment. Now finally I'm here and I go and delete this. I put the new validation. Now you can see this is the alert information. Don't use the stop information over here, otherwise you will not be able to complete this project. So I'm using this in the drop down. What I'm using, well, this is a formula one, so always use this equals to. Remember, I'm using equals to drop down list. Okay, so this will be taken as a name manager. Once this is done, the next thing which I'm going to do, I'm going to say no error, it has to come, make it false, right? And finally go back to your range C8, which is this cell. You have to go there, right? You can also go and instead of because when you have a multiple cells used here, when you will go and use let's say more than one cell in this C8, right now this is just a C8, but if you have a long list of the drop down, then make sure you, instead of this, you can go and say target.select, because target.select will also go and select the the cell which basically where you have done the changes. Okay, so finally I'm back on the C8. When I'm back on the C8, now this is what is I'm going to tell you, application.send keys, guys. Now if you go and Google it, application.send keys in Excel VBA, then basically there is a way of using the shortcut keys. You can create your own shortcut keys and you can also ask the VBA to press them for you. Okay, but this has this doesn't work all the time, because of the thing that this looks at the active window also at the same time. Now the point is application.send keys, it uses this percentage and the down. Well, if you go to the Google, for example, let me take you to the Google page. If I take you the page over here, you can go and see this in the Microsoft website also. Now these are all basically the shortcut keys which you can use. If you want to press backspace through VBA, I'm telling you, go and use the curly brackets, backspace, then break, then caps lock, all this. So these are all the shortcut keys you can study on this. Okay, so if you have to use, let's say, if they are using application.send keys in the bracket within the double quotes percentage and fx. Now you would ask me, what is a percentage? Percentage is a sign which is referred to the alt key. Caret is a sign which refers to the control key. Shift is shift has a plus sign. So if you go and write here plus and then you write fx basically is nothing. Fx stands for these keys. Okay, so let's say if I write here percentage and f1 within the curly bracket, you can see, and then what happens, your VB will press a key called alt f1. Okay, now what we are doing here is, if you look at this, to expand the data validation, there is a shortcut key called alt down arrow. Now alt is my percentage, as I showed you here, right? This is percentage. And what is my down arrow? Well, down arrow is, if you scroll it up, I showed you this, right? Every key has a some unique way of, if you want to call it from the VBA. So this is a right arrow, right, return, this is enter by the way, and somewhere here I have left, and somewhere here you find the another option which is up, like this is up, this is a down arrow as well here. Okay, anyways, you can go and look at this is the one. You can go and do more research on it, you can practice on the rest of the keys as well. This is very nice, right? So this is what we are using, application.send keys, and then where you have to send the keys, obviously the cell you have selected. Right now you have selected the C8, you can see here. So here, since we have already created the drop down from this, this portion, I simply say alt down arrow. So when I go and run it alt down arrow, you see I don't see the alt down arrow, and this is what I was talking, because you're right now you're on the VBA window, you have to go on the Excel window to operate this, right? So once I close this VBA window and I quickly run this send key will work, and this is how it is going to work. And finally we are making it sure that the enable events are going to be true again. Make sure you must go and turn them true, otherwise there will be a problem. Okay, because if events are false, then they will not run till the time you don't open the Excel file again. Right now, if I go and just simply remove the break code, and now I go and type in here maybe something else, let's say I go and type in here com and I press enter, you see that alt I is pressing, right? So you find here the two items which contains this com word, right guys? This is the entire the macro. And by the way, why I have written that target.count over here, well, target.count is written the reason is because sometime what happens, now if you select single cell, this is fine, but if you select more than cells at a time, for example, I go and put the break code here. Okay, now what I do is I go and select this entire range. Right now you selected this entire range, maybe you want to copy something or whatever you want to do, right? So when you go to the VBA program here, right now target.count, if it is greater than 1, then I don't want to do anything, because data validation happens only in a single cell, one by one. You may have 50 cells which has a data validation, but if you have to work on all the 50 cells, you have to go them one by one, and you have to use that drop down, isn't it? So that's why we are saying that if the target is going to be more than 1, simply exit. There is no need to go further, there's no need to check the the rest of the flow chart. We don't want to test any condition, because this is not, it's not even eligible for us. So I have selected 15 cells, that's why it says target.count 15. Finally it is greater than 1, and you find here the macro is immediately stopping. Okay, now the same way, if I put the break code here, now you see I copy this. Okay, in Excel here I copy this. Maybe you do copy and paste also, so maybe you go and somewhere go and paste this like this. Now the change happens in just one go, a change happens in so many cells, right? So what is the target.count? Because now the change event will fire, right? So your target is now 10, you are doing a changes in the 10 cells. Are we supposed to do anything when it comes to the data validation? Are we supposed to do anything in these cells? Of course not, because for me a target has to be 1 only, because we go and do the changes in a single cell. So I want that if this is greater than 1, immediately exit. So you see the macro immediately goes in the exit sub and it exits from there, because we don't want to go and testify the rest of the condition if it is going to involve so many cells, whether it is a selection or it is a change event, right guys? So this was the code for you. I hope I was able to explain you very well on this. But should you have any questions, any doubt, your doubts are always welcome. Okay, because knowledge sharing is knowledge gaining. Well, thank you so much guys, and hope you'll have a fun when you go and practice on this code. I'll see you. Bye bye.